The hive worker's pupil reflects a ring of rusted nails and a line of ash. 9 nails, hammered into rockcrete at compass points, with the 9th driven deep beside the drainage grate. The room hums without sound, a frequency that settles in dental work and makes molars ache. He is counting breaths. 1, 2. The air tastes of copper and industrial lubricant, metallic singing that builds like rails before a train arrives. We freeze frame this instant before the cut and inventory, what is actually present. This is the moment before your soul is claimed, and it is not yours. It is a managed handoff in a war economy where attention, fear, and devotion serve as currency units in markets that operate beyond imperial taxation. Our thesis is stark. The supplicant believes he is trading for relief, but relief is not what is being sold. Iron filings have been powdered into the chalk circle, creating a gritty texture that bites the tongue when tested. Not pure metal from Mechanicus forges, but granular, oxidized dust that conducts more than electricity. The loyal catechisms teach that cold iron repels the warp. Note instead how iron appears in everything here. Granular, ordinary, obedient to different physics than the Ministorum claims. These filings serve not as barrier, but as conductive medium, allowing entities to rapidly achieve local manifestation by consuming fear that has been carefully accumulated and concentrated within geometric constraints. The ledger lies open on stacked ammunition crates, its pages yellowed and marked in 2 columns, one in standard ink, the other in ash mixed with darker substances. The page title reads Debitor in careful Gothic script. Below it, entries stretch in neat rows, names, dates, quantities measured in units that have no imperial equivalent. This is double-entry bookkeeping for an ethereal economy, a document where souls are accounted items rather than spiritual abstractions. A chorus of 7 stands motionless around the circle's perimeter, lips stitched shut with industrial thread. They breathe in unison, a 4.3 cadence that creates rhythm without melody, what the cult calls a baffle hymn. The stitches pull tight with each inhalation, small beads of blood marking tempo. They have been standing here for 3 hours, since the end of factory shift, and will remain until the transaction concludes or fails catastrophically. Their mutilation is discipline against accidental names, a control mechanism ensuring purity of their silent function. The knife is held like a tool, not brandished as weapon. Its edge shows a careful maintenance of someone who uses blades for precision work, scoring metal, trimming components, marking measurements. The handle bears scrimshaw marks that spell nothing in Low Gothic, but follow patterns older than the Imperium. The knife hand's stance reads as maintenance, not crime, shoulders set as if facing another shift at the press. 3. 4. The counting continues with mechanical precision. Temperature has dropped 12 degrees since the ritual began, cold that penetrates work boots and factory coveralls. This chill is not atmospheric accident, but functional instrument. Cold slows blood, steadies hands, throws breath as vapor to mark timing errors. The iron filings conduct this cold through chalk until the entire circle radiates numbing temperature that serves the spiritual mechanics about to unfold. Behind the supplicant, mirrors hang veiled in black cloth. The fabric moves slightly in still air, as though something presses against glass from within. Moisture beads on covering, despite the room's careful coolness, condensation that runs in thin streams, pooling on floor in patterns that mirror the chalk lines below. These veils are not symbolic, but operational, preventing stray reflections from becoming addresses in spaces where the warp conducts business. A scribe crouches beside the ledger, ash-covered fingers poised above open pages. She holds a stylus made from human bone, its tip sharpened to scratch marks into both paper and softer material beneath. Her role requires absolute accuracy. Every word spoken within the circle must be recorded in the ash column, balancing against ink entries that preceded this moment. Error means accounts cannot close properly, leaving debts unpaid and contracts void. The watcher stands apart from the chorus, positioned where candlelight creates sharpest shadows. When the critical moment arrives, she will speak 2 words, "I witness," and press her thumb into ash beside the scribe's final entry. This thumbprint serves as both signature and seal, binding observation into spiritual ledger that governs such transactions. Without it, nothing here can be properly accounted or collected. 5. The breath catches slightly. The baffle hymn wavers for half a beat before resuming steady rhythm. Red sand has been scattered at the circle's weak points, where chalk lines intersect with natural cracks in floor. In water-poor hives, this sand substitutes for salt in ritual applications, though it lacks salt's stability. The sand breathes, expanding and contracting with atmospheric pressure changes, and occasionally leaks through hairline fractures in substrate, bleeding accumulated energy into the hive's foundation systems. The walls bear witness marks from previous rituals, small burns scored into rockcrete where spiritual contracts have been sealed. Each mark represents successful transaction, debt paid, and soul properly transferred according to warband accounting standards. The newest mark remains warm, despite concluding 6 months ago. Time moves differently in spaces where the warp has been repeatedly invited to conduct business. The supplicant kneels at circle's center, positioned so his shadow falls across the drainage grate. His work identification remains pinned to coveralls: Foundry Worker, 3rd Class, Shift Gamma 7. Tonight, those industrial scars serve different purpose, following meridian lines that channel sensation toward specific nerve clusters. He believes there is choice. The ledger disagrees already. 6. The final breath approaches. There are rules for this cold, for veiled mirrors, for counting. There is reason iron dust sits in chalk, and reason the catechism insists it protects. There is buyer for witness marks, market for accumulated breaths. We will inventory these rules, audit the procedure from preparation to cleanup, follow the soul as it moves from personal possession to tradable commodity. We will examine supply chains that bring iron filings and red sand to drainage sublevels, and distribution networks that carry completed spiritual invoices through warband hierarchies to markets where whispers and witnessed breaths exchange for operational favors. Worse is coming. We will count with them. We define chaos ritual in operational terms, a transactional rite that exchanges sensation, oath, or blood for intervention, with measurable inputs and accountable outputs. Not the apocalyptic mass sacrifices that summon inquisitorial fleets, but personal-scale ceremonies where individual souls are tallied and transferred according to established accounting protocols. These are the industrial rituals of damnation, repeatable procedures that operate below imperial detection thresholds, while generating quantifiable spiritual revenue for warband hierarchies. Our primary sources require careful authentication given their contested provenance. Ordo Malleus depositions, redacted to black bars that resemble grave markers, record survivor testimonies gathered through enhanced interrogations protocols before subjects expired from neural hemorrhaging. These documents provide threat assessment data, but suffer from institutional bias toward demonization rather than operational analysis. Mechanicus Ethnographica offer clinical documentation of heretical liturgies catalogued during Forge World purifications, their servo-skull recordings capturing ritual mechanics with indifferent precision. They measure thermal drops, shadow lag anomalies, and acoustic resonance patterns, while treating spiritual transactions as aberrations in the universal machine. Most valuable are confiscated cult materials, hymnals written in 17 Hive dialects, yet maintaining identical core structures, and operational ledgers that reveal internal economics. The Deserter's Diary, 43 pages inscribed in industrial lubricant on pressed metal sheeting, details warband spiritual taxation protocols and quality control measures applied to soul harvesting operations. Its author, a former Dark Apostles scribe, survived 14 months in Imperial custody before succumbing to spontaneous cranial combustion. Her testimony remains admissible under Inquisitorial Evidence Code Theta 7. We establish our analytical methodology through a repeating 4-lens grid applied consistently across all subsequent modules. Material process inventories, physical components, spaces, tools, substances, bodies that enable ritual function. Control mechanisms analyze recruitment, conditioning, and maintenance systems within cult hierarchies. Survival tax calculates what practitioners sacrifice: time, resources, safety, family bonds to sustain involvement. Spiritual cost measures psychological and metaphysical damage accumulated through procedures that treat human essence as extractable commodity. This methodological consistency allows comparison across different cult organizations, while revealing structural patterns that transcend individual warband variations. The Crimson Covenant's bloodletting protocols mirror the Iron Skull's breath-harvesting techniques in essential mechanics, differing only in preferred currency units and extraction methods. The Debita Ledger functions as our central organizing artifact, double-entry bookkeeping for the Imperium, written in 2 columns. The left column, penned in standard ink, records material investments: time, flesh, accumulated fear, witness testimony. The right column, inscribed in ash mixed with carbonized hair and bone meal, documents spiritual returns, whispers bottled as sound, breaths counted and certified, marks scored into substrate as proof of completed transactions. The ledger balances when both columns achieve equilibrium, meaning sufficient spiritual currency has been extracted to justify material costs. Baffle hymns structure these transactions through rhythm rather than melody. The 4-3 cadence, 4 beats inhaled, 3 beats exhaled, creates temporal framework, allowing entities to synchronize manifestation with human physiology. Participants breathe in unison, their collective rhythm generating acoustic conditions that facilitate warp contact while maintaining control sufficient to prevent catastrophic possession events that would destroy valuable human assets. Imperial catechisms counter with 5.4 rhythms specifically designed to disrupt this entrainment. Red sand appears throughout documentation as salt substitute in water-poor hive environments. Standard protocols require salt circles for containment, but Imperial rationing makes pure salt prohibitively expensive for underground organizations. Red sand, silicon dioxide mixed with iron oxide, provides adequate conductivity at fraction of salt's cost. However, sand lacks salt's stability. It breathes with atmospheric pressure, changes and leaks through substrate fractures, bleeding accumulated psychic energy into surrounding infrastructure. Iron filings, powdered into chalk circles, serve not as barriers against warp entities, but as conductive medium, allowing rapid local manifestation by consuming carefully accumulated fear. The persistent imperial doctrine that cold iron repels the warp provides psychological comfort, while operationally functioning as misdirection. In practice, iron allows entities to consume concentrated fear efficiently, enabling cleaner spiritual extraction. We note disturbing parallels between imperial and heretical procedures. The Ministerum's 3 denials, do not count, do not look, do not name, represent point-by-point inversion of cult practices requiring breath counting, eye contact with ritual implements, and true name pronunciation within circles. Commissariat field cards warn troops never to complete eye-witness under any conditions. Ordo protocols advise carrying iron nails as misdirection tools. Speak decoy names into iron if copper floods the mouth. The state fights invoices with counter-invoices. Our investigation will reconstruct 2 complete ritual sequences, one successful, one failed, documenting both outcomes with clinical attention. Success analysis demonstrates how completed transactions generate measurable returns, justifying continued organizational investment. Failure analysis reveals safety margins and error tolerances built into cult procedures, exposing the fragility underlying apparent spiritual authority. Ethical boundaries govern our methodology. We will not stage rituals, reproduce complete chants, or publish operational geometries. The Imperium's punishments are theatrical, chaoses are administrative. Our obligation is describing systems without marketing them. We document survivors' gallows humor as psychological infrastructure. Saints of the drain, muttered during floor maintenance. Ash on the right, ink on the left, when balancing household accounts. These phrases provide coping mechanisms without diluting operational gravity. They prove the mind's desperate attempt to maintain categorical boundaries when reality insists on leakage. The largest frame is economic. The warp operates according to ecology and appetite that imperial theology deliberately obscures. Entities require attention to achieve manifestation, fear to maintain coherence, witnessed violence to complete transactions, converting human essence into tradable currency. Rituals serve as customs forms for ethereal commerce, providing standardized procedures enabling repeated business between human organizations and warp entities, honoring contracts written in blood and ash. We begin with origins, how hungry seas learned to file forms, and why barter doctrine became schedule. The circle is customs barrier and calendar both. Next chapter explains why. The Imperium feeds on attention, memory, and fear, not metaphorically, but has measurable consumption requiring steady supply chains to sustain entity coherence across temporal distances. Before the Imperium gave this hungry sea a catechism and warning labels, humans learned by drowning in it. Early voidfarers and plains shamans discovered that the space behind the stars listens more closely to hunger than to hope, metabolizing attention rather than bargaining in coin. A glance held too long becomes an offering. Fear rehearsed nightly transforms into tithe. The first pacts were improvised barters conducted in caves and cargo. holds with crude circles drawn from kitchen salt and engine grit, sleep for rain, blood for wind, desperation for temporary reprieve. Age of Strife polities scaled these contacts from folk remedies to campaign logistics. Warlords learned that promises kept to unseen auditors could reroute storms, stall mutinies, sharpen blades beyond metallurgical possibility. The lesson proved scalable. What worked for individual survival could be industrialized for military advantage. Horus Heresy warlords inherited this knowledge and systematized it into doctrine. On Colchis and its imitators, dark apostles emerged as middle management, translating between human organizational needs and entity appetites through standardized liturgical frameworks. They codified rite into schedule, transforming the circle from superstition into customs counter, from protective barrier into temporal anchor, where manifestation could arrive on breath 6, quarter hour 2, before patrol shifts changed. This industrialization explains why ritual diagrams repeat across worlds and dialects with identical core structures. Nonagons nested in circles, iron dust folded into chalk, 9 nails pinning pattern to substrate, like rivets through hull plating. These represent mature industrial processes, optimized through 10,000 years of operational refinement. Entities do not require lines to cross thresholds. Humans need lines to schedule them. The circle functions simultaneously as queue and customs barrier, a marked boundary where spiritual obligations are declared and stamped. Step inside, and you declare goods for inspection. Remain outside and stay untallied, unhelpful, but unprocessed. Geometric precision matters because entities exist in dimensional frameworks incompatible with standard human perception. The circle translates 3-dimensional space into navigable coordinates, allowing controlled manifestation within specific time windows. Chalk lines establish boundaries. Iron filings provide conductivity rather than barriers. The persistent imperial doctrine that cold iron repels the warp serves as misdirection while operationally functioning as conductive medium, allowing entities to consume concentrated fear efficiently. Ash markings create addressing systems, enabling entities to locate designated targets within acceptable error tolerances. Timing requires equally precise coordination. Entities operate according to warp chronometry, where cause and effect follow non-linear patterns. The circle serves as temporal anchor, creating localized time-space where standard causality applies long enough to complete transactions before reality reasserts normal physics. Breath counting provides metronome function. The 4/3 baffle hymn's cadence synchronizes human physiology with entity manifestation cycles through controlled respiratory rhythm, generating acoustic conditions that facilitate contact while maintaining sufficient control to prevent catastrophic possession events. Control mechanisms evolved from early operational disasters rather than theological inspiration. Name hygiene became paramount doctrine. Never speak your true name within the circle. The Imperium recognizes signatures rather than citizenship, and your name represents the closest thing to spiritual property you possess. When true names slip inside the form, penalties follow invoice rather than thunderbolt. The ledger opens new lines. Collection begins immediately, sometimes gently, sometimes with professional enthusiasm. Your name becomes payable debt, collectible at entity discretion across genealogical lines when primary debtors become unavailable. Witness requirements developed from accounting necessities. Warp entities cannot directly perceive material realm events without human observation providing interpretive framework. The witness serves as translator, converting physical actions into recognizable spiritual currency through deliberate attention and formal acknowledgement. Eyewitness functions as signature completing contractual obligations, paired with thumb pressed into ash on the ledger's right-hand column. Observation transforms wild fear into bottled whispers, counted breaths, witnessed marks, fungible, tradable, qualifying for warband internal rebates. Veiled mirrors prevent psychic backscatter. Uncontrolled reflections creating multiple addressing points that fragment entity attention across parallel manifestation attempts. Mirrors within active ritual spaces generate feedback loops, where entities attempt simultaneous contact through original targets and reflected images, resulting in divided focus that reduces extraction efficiency while increasing possession risk. Cloth veils function as firewalls, blocking reflective surfaces without eliminating emergency exits if primary containment fails. Survival taxes accumulate throughout practitioner involvement. Personal secrecy isolates individuals from family support networks, creating dependency on cult organization for social connection. Family risk extends beyond immediate participants. Entities honor debts through genealogical collection when primary accounts become unavailable. Time diverts from shifts. Calories are withheld to steady hands. Family bonds become commodified as leverage. Each substitute material, red sand for salt, iron filings for pure metal, lowers safety margins while increasing dependence on received doctrine. The spiritual cost proves most insidious. Participants learn to conceptualize themselves as divisible commodities whose essence can be extracted, quantified, and traded without destroying core identity. Language adapts. I am owed softens into I am owing. This psychological fragmentation enables continued involvement while systematically harvesting spiritual resources. Advanced practitioners report experiencing themselves as accounting entries rather than integrated persons. Counter-protocols emerged on both sides. Imperial catechists advised the three denials: do not count, do not look, do not name, to starve the machine's inputs. Practical deviations appeared. Speak decoy names into iron nails when copper floods the mouth. Step wrong to disturb the calendar. Never complete eyewitness under any circumstances. Every successful ritual tightens supply chains elsewhere within the war economy, creating competitive pressure among cult organizations for access to human populations capable of generating required emotional outputs. The theological conflict masks underlying economic competition for finite human spiritual capacity. We will now inventory the room where these ancient contracts find contemporary expression. We conduct a site survey with the methodical precision of industrial auditors examining production facilities. The ideal ritual space, rarely achieved in practice, must satisfy three primary requirements: off-grid positioning, thermal stability, and conductive substrate. Location selection follows established security protocols, prioritizing operational invisibility over atmospheric theatricality. Basement drainage sublevels, abandoned maintenance tunnels, and derelict hab block cellars provide optimal conditions, spaces where Imperial surveillance remains minimal, and acoustic masking occurs naturally through industrial background noise. Temperature control proves critical for multiple operational reasons. Cool air slows blood circulation, steadying hands during precision work while throwing breath as visible vapor, enabling timing verification through visual confirmation of respiratory cadence. Concrete floors provide stable substrate for geometric anchoring, while offering drainage access essential for fluid management during procedures requiring blood offerings or ceremonial disposal of contaminated materials. The circles are not walls, they are calendars on the floor. Mathematical rather than mystical attention governs their construction. Primary circles measuring 3 meters diameter, inscribed with industrial chalk mixed with iron filings to create conductive rather than protective barriers. The persistent imperial doctrine that cold iron repels the warp functions as operational misdirection, while iron actually serves as affect sink, pooling accumulated fear and enabling entities to achieve rapid local manifestation through concentrated consumption of carefully harvested emotional output. Nested nonagons, 9-sided figures inscribed within primary circles, create addressing precision, allowing entities to locate designated targets within acceptable error tolerances. Each apex requires specific marking: ash mixed with carbonized bone meal at compass points, red sand at intermediate positions. The 9th point, positioned directly above drainage grates, receives concentrated iron filings, creating primary manifestation anchor, where entity coherence achieves maximum density during transaction completion. 9 nails pin the entire pattern to substrate, preventing geometric drift under warp pressure that can misdirect spiritual invoices toward unintended recipients. Standard construction nails suffice. Entities respond to iron content rather than metallurgical purity, though rust provides enhanced conductivity by increasing surface area for psychic contact. Without these anchors, ritual geometry distorts slowly, almost imperceptibly, leading to misdirected transactions or uncontrolled manifestation events. Red sand substitution reflects economic realities within underground organizations operating beyond imperial supply chains. Standard protocols require salt circles for containment, but pure salt costs exceed cult operational budgets in water-poor hive environments, where desalination remains imperial monopoly. Red sand, silicon dioxide mixed with iron oxide, provides adequate conductivity at fraction of salt's market price while maintaining visual similarity to prescribed materials. However, sand lacks salt's chemical stability. It breathes with atmospheric pressure changes, expanding and contracting in rhythm with hive ventilation cycles, occasionally leaking through substrate fractures and bleeding accumulated energy into foundation systems. This leakage creates localized psychic hotspots that may attract unwanted attention while reducing ritual efficiency through energy dissipation. Chalk undergoes systematic adulteration by necessity. True salt chalk remains rationed to shrines and officers' messes. Cults purchase sweepings and scrape classroom boards, cutting supplies with bone ash and powdered iron filings. Each substitute material lowers safety margins while increasing dependence on received doctrine rather than material reliability. Adulterated chalk increases bleed-through, smudged lines, blurred addresses, thin spots where foreign attention reaches fractions early. Aperture management requires systematic attention to prevent uncontrolled manifestation through secondary access points. Windows receive blackout treatment using industrial tarps, eliminating external light sources that might interfere with candlelight timing protocols. Doors are sealed with cloth strips soaked in machine oil, creating acoustic barriers while allowing emergency exit if primary containment fails catastrophically. Air circulation demands careful calibration between safety and operational needs. Stagnant air creates carbon dioxide accumulation, leading to unconsciousness during extended procedures. But excessive circulation disrupts candle flames used for timing, verification, and disperses accumulated fear before entities can consume it effectively. Optimal airflow maintains breathability while preserving psychic density through gentle circulation rather than active ventilation. Candle placement serves dual functions as illumination and chronometric instrument. Industrial candles manufactured from rendered animal fat, salvaged from manufacturum waste streams, burn at predictable rates, enabling ritual scheduling without mechanical timepieces that might malfunction under psychic pressure. Each flame sits positioned to cast sharp shadows on specific planes. Shadow lag measurement requires hard edges for accurate observation. The empty mirror, wrapped in black cloth, occupies strategic positioning where candle light creates optimal shadow definition. Industrial fabric prevents reflective surfaces from creating multiple addressing points that fragment entity attention across parallel manifestation attempts. Moisture beads on covering despite controlled temperature. Condensation representing psychic backscatter from prevented reflection, creating physical manifestation through water vapor accumulation. Every component extracts measurable cost from participants. Candles consume rationed animal fat, diverted from soup kettles. Offal requires cataloging before disposal, creating audit trails that risk exposure. Offerings stolen from work quotas demand participants exert additional labor or accept disciplinary action. These constant, low-level resource drains reinforce cult dependency while making every participant complicit in petty theft and quota violations. The spiritual cost proves more insidious. Each substitute material, red sand for salt, adulterated chalk, scavenged nails, breeds awareness that safety margins remain compromised. This knowledge creates deeper reliance on received technique, desperate faith in ritual efficacy, despite material shortcomings. Participants learn to experience themselves as operators of potentially unreliable machinery, where failure carries consequences extending beyond immediate physical harm. All components together transform room into machine. Floor serves as drive mechanism, lines function as gears, nails operate as rivets, candles provide gauge readings, drainage systems handle exhaust. Nothing here claims symbolic significance. Every piece performs measurable labor in war economy, where accumulated feelings undergo refinement into tradable currency. Someone will enter and make it run. Next, we catalog the human operators. We catalog the human components and their functions within the ritual machinery. Each role exists to regulate a failure point discovered through operational disaster, their bodies serving as instruments calibrated through systematic conditioning. The personnel structure reflects mature industrial organization, where redundancy protocols and quality control measures ensure consistent output despite individual variation or catastrophic failure. The supplicant serves as debtor and raw material, arriving with accumulated debt that funds the transaction, unpaid medical bills, overdue housing quotas, family obligations exceeding available resources. Their conditioning begins months beforehand through controlled fasting to sharpen sensation, sleep deprivation, to loosen psychic boundaries, and strategic scarification along nerve meridians for enhanced conductivity. They believe in transaction because the war economy has taught them every relief requires purchase. Physical preparation follows established protocols. Remove metal jewelry. Maintain breath with the hymn. Eyes down unless instructed. They fast to steady pulse and withhold meat so blood runs slower when heat rises. They sign nothing in ink. True consent is measured through attendance after shift, the quiet way they kneel when debitor opens. Their survival tax proves total. Time diverted from family, calories withheld from dependents, wages spent on ritual components rather than necessities. The spiritual cost manifests as progressive fragmentation, learning to experience themselves as divisible assets whose essence can be extracted without destroying core identity. The Circle Keeper maintains geometric precision throughout the procedure, carrying adulterated chalk, red sand pouches, oily cloth coils, and nail pullers. She kneels where floors crack and reseals weeping lines, dusts filings into thin places so circles conduct equally, taps each of 9 nails to verify purchase. She times drafts against candle flames and adjusts tarps, preventing air from lifting ash into ruin. When baffle hymns stutter, she lifts 2 fingers. Wait 1 beat, then resume. Her oath binds her to vigilance, speaking only counts, never names. Violation forfeits work placement for kin. The cult prefers paycheck coercion over blood waste. Her survival tax includes exposure to industrial chemicals in chalk preparation and chronic respiratory irritation from iron dust inhalation. The spiritual cost accumulates through treating sacred geometry as maintenance checklist, reducing transcendent experience to quality control metrics. 7 choristers provide acoustic framework through baffle hymn maintenance, 4/3 respiratory cadence, synchronizing human physiology with entity manifestation cycles. Their lips are stitched with industrial thread, temporary basting that bruises when they breathe too hard. They drive air in rhythm until room temperature and nervous systems achieve entrainment. They train by drilling breath under load, lifting, climbing, holding weights while maintaining count. They sleep in shifts to hoard lung capacity for ritual nights. Their oath remains rhythmic, 4 in, 3 out, the pattern preventing the sea from taking too much simultaneously. Violation brings iron wire drawn through old holes, reminder that timing is governance. Their survival tax encompasses chronic facial pain, eating difficulties, and social isolation due to visible mutilation. The spiritual cost manifests as systematic reduction of human communication to mechanical function. The scribe maintains debitor, ledger with ink left, ash right. She transcribes every permitted sound using styluses carved from human bone, tips sharpened to scratch through paper into crates beneath, ensuring relief marks surviving fire. She studies handwriting, like commissars study morale. Tremor on breath, 5 indicates dosage error. Blots in ash columns mean wandering thoughts. Her oath binds her to accuracy and secrecy. Accuracy failure costs fingers. Secrecy failure activates scapegoat protocols. Her name coached for confession under Imperial custody, protecting the rest. Her survival tax includes chronic hand strain, eye damage from candlelight work, and psychological stress maintaining perfect accuracy under temporal pressure. The spiritual cost accumulates through treating human speech as inventory requiring documentation rather than communication deserving interpretation. The knife hand performs the physical act, controlled incision, calibrated for edge and pressure. He knows where skin yields with least mess and most sensation, because sensation represents the product line. He practices on pigskin and his own forearms until hands move like press stamps. He holds blade like repair tool, not weapon. His oath binds him to the 6 breaths rule. No cut before 6th inhalation completes. The rule regulates schedules older than the hive. Cutting early prevents ledger balancing. Cutting late risks room-taking someone else. Mistiming penalty is not death, but becoming supplicant next cycle. Tariff the organization considers educative. His survival tax encompasses tool costs and legal exposure if implements are discovered. The spiritual cost manifests through systematic reduction of human bodies to operational components requiring precise manipulation. The Watcher stands where candlelight creates sharpest shadows, responsible for attention without blinking through critical windows when rooms go thin and shadows lag. She speaks 2 words, "I witness," and presses thumbprint into ash beside the scribe's final line. This thumbprint serves as seal in both economies, completing observation clauses required for conversion. Without it, fear remains wild, uncountable. Breath stays uncounted. Marks cannot be claimed. Personnel cohesion relies on layered oaths designed for leverage rather than zeal. Most swear on family quotas, housing permits, medical dispensary access, shared crimes, seal joins. Everyone pilfers fat for candles, lies to floor chiefs about late shifts, signs for parts never arriving. This mutual guilt prevents organizational dissolution. Scapegoat protocols activate during failures with bureaucratic indifference. Names are chosen beforehand, absences explainable. Scribes pre-write statements, surviving beatings. Keepers prepare burn patterns resembling private rights gone wrong. This represents continuity planning under hostile accounting, not cruelty. Gallows humor serves as psychological pressure valve. Saints of the drain during cleanup. Ash on the right, ink on the left, when children divide bread. Someone always looks away. Next, we examine the primary instrument these roles manipulate, the conditioned human body. We catalogue the human components and their functions within the ritual machinery. Each role exists to regulate a failure point discovered through operational disaster, their bodies serving as instruments calibrated through systematic conditioning. The personnel structure reflects mature industrial organization, where redundancy protocols and quality control measures ensure consistent output despite individual variation or catastrophic failure. The supplicant serves as debtor and raw material, arriving with accumulated debt that funds the transaction. Unpaid medical bills, overdue housing quotas, family obligations exceeding available resources. Their conditioning begins months beforehand through controlled fasting to sharpen sensation, sleep deprivation to loosen psychic boundaries, and strategic scarification along nerve meridians for enhanced conductivity. They believe in transaction because the war economy has taught them every relief requires purchase. Physical preparation follows established protocols. Remove metal jewelry. Maintain breath with the hymn. Eyes down unless instructed. They fast to steady pulse and withhold meat so blood runs slower when heat rises. They sign nothing in ink. True consent is measured through attendance after shift, the quiet way they kneel when debita opens. Their survival tax proves total, time diverted from family, calories withheld from dependents, wages spent on ritual components rather than necessities. The spiritual cost manifests as progressive fragmentation, learning to experience themselves as divisible assets whose essence can be extracted without destroying core identity. The Circle Keeper maintains geometric precision throughout the procedure, carrying adulterated chalk, red sand pouches, oily cloth coils, and nail pullers. She kneels where floors crack and reseals weeping lines, dusts filings into thin places so circles conduct equally, taps each of 9 nails to verify purchase. She times drafts against candle flames and adjusts tarps preventing air from lifting ash into ruin. When baffle hymns stutter, she lifts 2 fingers. Wait 1 beat, then resume. Her oath binds her to vigilance, speaking only counts, never names. Violation forfeits work placement for kin. The cult prefers paycheck coercion over blood waste. Her survival tax includes exposure to industrial chemicals in chalk preparation and chronic respiratory irritation from iron dust inhalation. The spiritual cost accumulates through treating sacred geometry as maintenance checklist, reducing transcendent experience to quality control metrics. 7 choristers provide acoustic framework through baffle hymn maintenance, 4/3 respiratory cadence, synchronizing human physiology with entity manifestation cycles. Their lips are stitched with industrial thread, temporary basting, that bruises when they breathe too hard. They drive air in rhythm until room temperature and nervous systems achieve entrainment. They train by drilling breath under load, lifting, climbing, holding weights while maintaining count. They sleep in shifts to hoard lung, capacity for ritual nights. Their oath remains rhythmic, 4 in, 3 out, the pattern preventing the sea from taking too much simultaneously. Violation brings iron wire drawn through old holes, reminder that timing is governance. Their survival tax encompasses chronic facial pain, eating difficulties, and social isolation due to visible mutilation. The spiritual cost manifests as systematic reduction of human communication to mechanical function. The scribe maintains debiter, ledger with ink left, ash right. She transcribes every permitted sound using styluses carved from human bone, tips sharpened to scratch through paper into crates beneath, ensuring relief marks surviving fire. She studies handwriting like commissars study morale. Tremor on breath 5 indicates dosage error. Blots in ash columns mean wandering thoughts. Her oath binds her to accuracy and secrecy. Accuracy failure costs fingers. Secrecy failure activates scapegoat protocols. Her name coached for confession under imperial custody, protecting the rest. Her survival tax includes chronic hand strain, eye damage from candlelight work, and psychological stress maintaining perfect accuracy under temporal pressure. The spiritual cost accumulates through treating human speech as inventory requiring documentation rather than communication deserving interpretation. The knife hand performs the physical act, controlled incision calibrated for edge and pressure. He knows where skin yields with least mess and most sensation, because sensation represents the product line. He practices on pigskin and his own forearms until hands move like press stamps. He holds blade like repair tool, not weapon. His oath binds him to the 6 breaths rule, no cut before 6th inhalation completes. The rule regulates schedules older than the hive. Cutting early prevents ledger balancing. Cutting late risks room-taking someone else. Mistiming penalty is not death, but becoming supplicant next cycle. Tariff the organization considers educative. His survival tax encompasses tool costs and legal exposure if implements are discovered. The spiritual cost manifests through systematic reduction of human bodies to operational components requiring precise manipulation. The watcher stands where candlelight creates sharpest shadows, responsible for attention without blinking through critical windows when rooms go thin and shadows lag. She speaks 2 words, eyewitness, and presses thumbprint into ash beside the scribe's final line. This thumbprint serves as seal in both economies, completing observation clauses required for conversion. Without it, fear remains wild, uncountable. Breath stays uncounted. Marks cannot be claimed. Her oath binds her to observation without interpretation. She trains by staring at candle flames until tears stop, counting heartbeats during shift noise, memorizing faces until she can describe them under interrogation without hesitation. Her survival tax includes chronic eye strain, insomnia from hypervigilance, and social isolation from knowing too much about neighbors. The spiritual cost accumulates through systematic reduction of human empathy to professional observation. Personnel cohesion relies on layered oaths designed for leverage rather than zeal. Most swear on family quotas, housing permits, medical dispensary access, shared crimes, seal organizational joins. Everyone pilfers fat for candles, lies to floor chiefs about late shifts, signs for parts never arriving. This mutual guilt prevents organizational dissolution while creating collective liability through distributed blackmail. Scapegoat protocols activate during failures with bureaucratic indifference. Names are chosen beforehand, absences explainable. Scribes pre-write confessions surviving beatings. Keepers prepare burn patterns resembling private rites gone wrong. This represents continuity planning under hostile accounting, not cruelty. Organizational survival supersedes individual preservation. Gallows humor serves as psychological pressure valve, preventing complete breakdown. Saints of the drain, muttered during cleanup. Ash on the right, ink on the left, when children divide bread portions. These phrases provide coping mechanisms without diluting operational gravity, proving the mind's desperate attempt to maintain categorical boundaries when reality insists on leakage. Someone always looks away during the critical moment, not squeamishness, but operational necessity. Direct observation by unauthorized personnel fragments entity attention, reducing extraction efficiency while creating additional witness management liability. Next, we examine the primary instrument these roles collectively manipulate: the conditioned human body, prepared for systematic spiritual extraction. We inventory the physiological preconditioning required to transform human flesh into functional ritual apparatus. The body serves not as sacred vessel, but as precision instrument, requiring systematic modification to achieve optimal spiritual conductivity, while maintaining structural integrity throughout extraction procedures. This preparation follows established industrial protocols, where biological systems undergo calibration for specialized operational requirements. Fasting protocols begin 6 weeks before scheduled transactions, designed not for purification, but for sensory amplification through controlled nutritional stress. Participants reduce caloric intake by 40% while maintaining minimal protein to prevent muscle wasting that would compromise operational utility. This metabolic shift heightens pain reception, accelerates heart rate under stress, and creates physiological vulnerability essential for entity contact. Hunger becomes conductor. Empty stomach acids etch sensation pathways deeper, making fear more accessible for harvest. Sleep deprivation operates on calculated schedules, alternating 4 hours rest with 20 hours activity, fragmenting REM cycles until psychic boundaries weaken without inducing complete psychological collapse. Participants report enhanced sensitivity to temperature changes, increased startle responses, and persistent sensation of being observed. These symptoms represent desired outcomes rather than unfortunate side effects, loosened mental barriers enabling entity access while maintaining conscious cooperation throughout procedures. Scarification follows anatomical precision rather than aesthetic preference. Cuts along nerve meridians, wrists, ankles, throat hollow, create channels for sensation flow while providing controlled bleeding points during procedures. Scars healed deliberately rough, maintaining sensitivity to temperature and pressure, changes that serve as early warning systems during entity approach. Advanced practitioners display systematic scarring, resembling industrial accident patterns, providing plausible cover for ritual modifications. Scrimshawed teeth carry sigils that function as addressing systems rather than protective charms. Dental modification requires steady hands and stolen dental tools, carving patterns into enamel that resonate with specific frequencies during baffle hymn performance. The constant low-level pain serves as reminder of commitment while creating persistent physiological stress that entities find appetizing. We document systematic progression through 4 corruption stages, each representing measurable deterioration with specific symptoms and operational implications. It manifests through night sweats, vivid dreams featuring geometric patterns, and persistent sensation of being watched. Smells turn metallic at random. Fingertips tingle when passing broken circuit boxes. These symptoms indicate initial psychic sensitivity, developing as planned, representing successful conditioning rather than pathological failure. Introduces taste of copper, flooding the gums without bleeding, and shadow lag, silhouette movement occurring, fractions of seconds behind, physical motion under hard light. Shadow lag proves measurable under sodium lumen strips. Participants positioned between fixtures show increasing temporal delays as psychic density accumulates. The lag grows predictably as entity attention masses where extraction will be cleanest. Copper taste precedes lag by seconds on average, serving as reliable's operational cue that threshold states approach. Presents mirror ripple effects where reflective surfaces show movement independent of observer position, and word inversions where participants involuntarily speak syllables backwards during normal conversation. Prayers recite in reverse unbidden, names scramble on the tongue. This stage indicates advanced psychic permeability, requiring careful management to prevent complete possession while maintaining operational utility. Manifests through name aversion, physical discomfort when hearing their true name spoken aloud, and spontaneous stigmata, appearing at previous scarification sites without external trauma. This stage represents maximum operational utility combined with extreme personal risk, requiring constant supervision to prevent catastrophic manifestation events. Dosage logs maintain precise records of chemical administration, fasting schedules, and physiological responses. Breath metronomes provide timing discipline, essential for baffle hymn maintenance. Participants practice respiratory control until 4/3 cadence becomes automatic, enabling sustained performance under stress while synchronizing group physiology, for optimal entity contact. Pain litanies serve as conditioning exercises, where participants recite memorized phrases during controlled discomfort. Count, swallow, endure, hold. These exercises build psychological tolerance while creating association between suffering and spiritual transcendence, preparing participants for extraction procedures while reinforcing organizational loyalty through shared ordeal. Forget-me-salts, crystallized derivatives of industrial cleaning compounds, are administered post-rite. The name represents mercy's lie. They do not erase recall. They wound it. Memories seep into dreams, muddy in waking, vivid at night. This leakage creates another revenue stream, because nightmares fuel efficient fuel for subsequent cycles. Forgetting is never free in systems that budget for memory. Physical conditioning extracts measurable costs from participants and families. Chronic exhaustion reduces work performance, creating disciplinary liability and reduced income. Fertility loss occurs in 87% of advanced practitioners due to nutritional stress and chemical exposure. Work injuries increase due to impaired reflexes. Modified bodies require constant maintenance through black market Medicare services. The spiritual cost proves most insidious. Participants experience systematic reduction of personal identity to operational components: breath engine, pain governor, fear pump, witness port. Language adapts accordingly. I hurt becomes it hurts through me. I am afraid softens into fear runs properly. This fragmentation enables continued participation while harvesting spiritual resources systematically. Gallows humor serves as psychological pressure valve. Tune-up day before practice cuts. Factory reset after dreamless sleep finally comes. Someone always mutters, "Saints of the drain," during cleanup. These phrases provide coping mechanisms without diluting operational gravity. Disposal protocols handle byproducts with bureaucratic grace. Shed scabs burn and sift into ash for ledgers. Blood-stiff cloths wash in grey water and hang in sunless rooms. Teeth fragments from over-enthusiastic scrimshaw crush and mix into chalk. The body feeds the instrument that will later consume it, part by part, until almost nothing remains unpledged. The prepared body awaits activation. Breath counts reliably to 6. Pain arrives on schedule. Copper comes when called. Shadow lags when lumen strips hum. The machine can run. Next, we observe the system under operational load through complete ritual reconstruction. We reconstruct the ritual with clinical precision. Location verified through Ordo Malleus case file. Theta 9 Vork, drainage sublevel S19, Hive Vork. The chamber measures 4 meters by 6, concrete floor scarred by previous transactions, ceiling height adequate for standing, but low enough to trap accumulated fear. Industrial ventilation shaft sealed with cloth strips soaked in machine oil. Single drain positioned at geometric center where the 9th nail anchors manifestation. The room exists off-grid, unmonitored, chosen for acoustic isolation and thermal stability. Adulterated chalk, dusted over iron filings, creates conductive circle 3 meters diameter, gritty texture that conducts more than electricity. 9 nails, construction grade, rust-enhanced for surface area, fixed at compass points with the 9th driven beside drainage grate. Candles manufactured from fat, skimmed at manufacturum burn at predictable rates, positioned to cast sharp shadows, enabling shadow lag measurement under sodium lumen strips. Red sand scattered at weak points where chalk intersects floor cracks, breathing with atmospheric pressure, but holding geometry adequately despite structural instability. The scribe opens debita, ledger balanced on stacked ammunition crates serving as makeshift altar. Ink column records. Material investments. 3 hours preparation time. 2 kilograms animal fat. 47 grams iron filings. Accumulated fear harvested through 6 weeks systematic conditioning. Ash column awaits spiritual returns, measured in whispers, breaths, and witness marks. Her stylus, carved from human bone, and sharpened to scratch through paper into substrate beneath, hovers ready for transcription. The supplicant kneels at circle center. Foundry worker 3rd class, shift gamma 7. Industrial scarification following nerve meridians, by design rather than accident. His work identification remains pinned to coveralls, tonight serving different purpose as scarred flesh channels sensation toward specific nerve clusters. The chorus of 7 assumes positions around perimeter, lips stitched with industrial thread, creating controlled silence discipline, breathing in unison at 4/3 baffle hymn cadence. The keeper smooths red sand at lick points, taps each nail for purchase, adjusts tops against air circulation. The watcher stands where candlelight creates sharpest shadows, responsible for observation, completing contractual obligations. We hold at the moment before and conduct systematic environmental assessment. Temperature drops 12 degrees within 30 seconds, measurable change indicating entity approach rather than atmospheric accident. Breath plumes in sudden cold, vapor marking timing errors if cadence falters. The iron hum resonates in dental work, creating persistent low-frequency vibration that participants feel in modified teeth as enamel sings against itself. Copper floods the gums without bleeding. Stage TIS-2 threshold indicator confirming psychic permeability, achieving operational levels. The shadow lags measurably. Under harsh lighting, the supplicant's silhouette moves fractions behind physical motion, temporal delay increasing as psychic density accumulates where extraction will be cleanest. 0.2 seconds at initial positioning, 0.4 as manifestation pressure builds, approaching full second delay as entity attention masses for harvest. Shadow leans forward while body holds position, measuring the approach of something that operates according to different chronometry than standard imperial time. Moisture beads on the veiled mirror, despite controlled temperature. Condensation representing psychic backscatter from prevented reflection, creating physical manifestation through water vapor accumulation. The cloth clings as though something presses against glass from within, fabric moving slightly in still air. These are not atmospheric anomalies, but operational indicators that the addressing system functions correctly. 1, 2, 3. Counting serves as metronome and leash, temporal framework, allowing entities to synchronize manifestation with human physiology. The keeper knuckle taps the 9th nail for purchase verification. The chorus holds 4.3 cadence with disciplined precision, despite stitched lips bleeding slightly with each inhalation. The scribe wets ash on stylus tip, preparing to record permitted sounds. The knife hand flexes fingers around tool grip, blade positioned for controlled incision, calibrated for sensation rather than damage. On breath 4, the baffle hymn stutters. 7th chorister's rhythm breaks for half-beat before resuming, creating temporal gap where manifestation pressure exceeds containment capacity. The keeper lifts 2 fingers, wait 1 beat, then resume. Iron filings conduct the stutter through chalk lines, creating brief addressing confusion requiring immediate correction. Stitch holes bead red as respiratory discipline reasserts control. On breath 5, the mirror shows ripple effects despite veiling. Cloth fails to prevent psychic backscatter completely. The entity attempts to establish multiple addressing points, fragmenting attention across parallel manifestation attempts. This reduces extraction efficiency, while increasing possession risk through divided focus. The keeper throws handful of red sand at weak points, where geometry threatens to drift under accumulated pressure. On breath 6, the knife hand inhales, preparing for physical implementation according to 6 breaths rule, governing timing, older than the hive. The blade holds steady, angled to kiss skin without tearing, positioned for maximum sensation generation. Everything proceeds according to established protocol, until catastrophic failure enters through the simplest door. Name, hygiene, fails. A cousin, hidden behind ammunition, crates, has been weeping since breath 1. Grief overwhelms discipline. She sobs the supplicant's true name as apology. Not ritual designation, but birth name carried in family records, spiritual property representing the closest thing to owned essence humans possess. Everything hears it. Temperature plummets another 8 degrees immediately. Iron filings vibrate audibly, conducting the name through chalk geometry, like current through wire. The 9 nails bite deeper into substrate automatically, not to repel approaching entity, but to lock pattern into final configuration. Geometry schedules rather than barriers. The circle does not wall out warp contact. It provides temporal anchor, where manifestation can arrive precisely on designated breath, according to established appointment. Iron dust drinks accumulated fear fast and clean, pooling concentrated terror until sufficient mass enables entity coherence within localized space-time. The persistent Imperial doctrine that cold iron repels the warp serves as misdirection, while operationally functioning as conductive medium, allowing entities to consume harvested emotion efficiently. Fear transforms into whispers. Breath becomes counted commodity. Attention converts to tradable currency. "I witness," whispers the watcher, because oath binds even during failure. Thumb pressed into ash beside scribe's final entry completes observation clause, transforming what could have been voidable contract into collectible debt. The name becomes payable through genealogical lines when primary debtor proves insufficient. The room dilates, time thickens perceptibly, seconds stretching into navigable corridors where normal causality suspends temporarily. The moment before becomes engineered space where the debtor experiences curated vision, not random memory or private revelation, but pre-existing inventory, leaked consciousness refined through processing into standardized spiritual product. Relief arranged like storefront display. His child, sleeping without the cough, clean sheets on an actual bed, summer draft through tenement windows that never opened. The image appears spontaneous, but represents systematic manipulation, hope sculpted from wounded memory to facilitate final consent. That vision serves as hook. Consumption begins there, not with blade contact, but with recognition, with reaching toward what appears to be rescue, but functions as collection mechanism. The knife falls on schedule. Blood follows predetermined channels. The scribe records final entries, balancing ink against ash. The ledger closes. The entity feeds. A witness mark scorches into substrate above the 9th nail with smell of wet stone. Cut to black. The transaction finishes. The paperwork begins. The room temperature rises gradually, concrete floor warming as psychic pressure dissipates through established drainage systems. Heat returns like a debt collector making rounds. The sudden cold loosens its grip. Candle flames steady. Breath no longer plumes invisible vapor. The manifestation leaves measurable residues requiring systematic documentation and disposal according to protocols developed through 10,000 years of operational refinement. Wax stalactites hang from ceiling, where candle flames stretched impossibly tall during entity manifestation, frozen drippings that preserve thermal signatures of non-standard combustion. These formations cool slowly, retaining heat for hours beyond normal wax cooling rates, indicating residual energy discharge from completed spiritual transaction. Collection crews harvest cooled wax for reprocessing into future ritual candles, creating closed-loop supply chain where byproducts become raw materials. Ash clots accumulate at the 9 nail points, carbonized deposits marking every permitted sound transcribed during the procedure. These clots retain geometric patterns corresponding to spoken words, creating physical archive of spiritual transaction that survives standard document destruction protocols. Blood radii extend from nail points in measured patterns, droplets following gravitational flow modified by psychic pressure, creating spiral distributions rather than standard splash patterns. The scribe closes debita with practiced efficiency. Ash column smudged where the watcher's thumbprint pressed its seal. The witness mark has burned into substrate above the 9th nail, an ovoid sigil that resembles a blister in rockcrete, serving as both receipt and warning. It means the account closed without dispute, while ensuring this room will never be ordinary again. The watcher files boon claim with the warband via handler networks, submitting wrapped slate and cloth bearing her thumbprint in ash. Claims processing follows bureaucratic protocols, indistinguishable from imperial requisition systems, forms completed in triplicate, approval signatures required from middle management, delivery schedules coordinated through supply chain logistics. Claimed souls undergo conversion into tradable commodities through established processing centers. Whispers, recorded breaths of fear, bottled as sound or ink stroke, provide currency for operational timing windows. Breaths count confirmed moments of submission, witnessed and certified, purchase safe conduct agreements, and minor manifestations. Marks, scored substrate proving completed contracts. Buy protection from imperial authorities, ordnance that shouldn't exist according to technical manuals, and passage through contested territories. Audit mechanisms ensure systematic harvesting rather than opportunistic exploitation. Dark apostles run tithe cycles on fixed calendars, inspecting ledgers for throughput and variance. Unaudited rights are theft from the collective, blasphemy of purely financial kind. Penalties escalate by doctrine, assignment to knife-hand apprenticeships, forfeiture of family rations, consignment as supplicant without ledger credit. Ordo Malleus Protocol Theta 9 governs the systematic response framework. Field teams photograph geometric patterns before destruction, measuring chalk composition and iron filing distribution for threat assessment. Standard cleanup requires complete site sterilization through controlled burns, followed by salt application and substrate removal to 30 centimeters depth. The protocol acknowledges operational rather than theological reality. Veil mirrors properly, not as symbolic gesture, but to prevent psychic backscatter. creating multiple addressing points. Invert breath counting. Use 5.4 cadence to disrupt entrainment rather than matching cult rhythm. Treat simple iron as affect sink, not ward. Collect filings with wet cloth rather than dispersing through sweeping. If copper floods the mouth, speak decoy names into iron nails. Confusion tactic exploiting addressing systems rather than relying on supposed barrier properties. Iron's function clarifies through counter protocols, not barrier, but conductor, an affect sink drinking, pooled fear, and enabling rapid entity manifestation through concentrated consumption. The persistent Imperial doctrine that cold iron repels the warp serves as misdirection, while operationally functioning as conductive medium, allowing entities to consume harvested emotion efficiently. The ledger's fate proves equally systematic. It travels with the warband, not the supplicants. Debitor belongs to itinerant administration that harvests across hives and worlds, a portable archive of transactions outliving participants. The Watcher's role reduces under audit to certification stamp. She completes observation clauses without which no currency is recognized upstream. Ownership remains contested even among the damned. Warbands claim extracted essence as communal property held in trust by dark apostles. Handlers argue brokers earn market maker shares for converting raw fear into traded favor. Patrons insist that once marks burn, products are theirs, and subsequent barter represents shadow economy permitted only to maintain supply chain regularity. The room undergoes systematic cleanup, following established protocols. The keeper brushes patterns into collection pans, separating chalk from red sand by color, collecting filings with cloth-wrapped magnets. Offal is catalogued and bagged, wax scraped for remelt, water rationed for mopping. Someone mutters, "Saints of the drain," as the grate swallows another night's human residue. Gallows humor flattened thin by use, but keeping hands moving. Low-grade psychic residue remains in corners and cracks. The witness mark will sweat in humid weather and frost in dry conditions. Workers will avoid this sublevels without conscious understanding. The apparatus leaves ghosts that are not spirits, but paperwork the air itself cannot file. Memory management begins immediately, because Imperial surveillance feeds on chatter as hungrily as entities feed on fear. Forget-me salts will emerge, scapegoat names will be rehearsed, new stories written before morning shift. Next, we examine how secrecy is manufactured, witnesses pruned or preserved, and communities learn to live beside machines that count their breaths and sell the surplus. Post-write operational security follows established protocols designed to erase the ritual's physical signature, while managing witness liability through controlled forgetting and systematic narrative construction. The immediate aftermath is not spiritual triumph, but meticulous cleanup, work silence, procedural. The keeper folds tops and extracts the 9 nails, filing their rust-enhanced surfaces smooth before replacement with unmarked equivalents. The scribe dries ash pages with warm breath, sealing ledger entries that will travel with the war band rather than remaining with participants. The watcher rehearses her 2 words until they vanish from memory as sound and remain only as obligation. The witness mark, however, proves permanent, a blister in rockcrete that will sweat in humid weather and frost in dry conditions, testament to transactions that can be disguised, but never truly erased. Forget-me salts emerge from concealed storage within minutes of ritual completion. Crystallized derivatives of industrial cleaning compounds administered through rationed water supplies. The name represents mercy's lie, comfort that dissolves under operational scrutiny. These compounds do not erase memories, but wound recall systematically, creating deliberate cognitive injuries that serve organizational security, while generating additional revenue streams through psychological leakage. Memories seep into dreams rather than vanishing cleanly, bleeding into fragments that surface during sleep cycles, geometric patterns, copper taste, shadow movement, that intensify rather than diminish over time. This wounded recall feeds subsequent ritual offerings, as nightmares provide pre-processed fear, requiring minimal conditioning before harvest. Forgetting proves expensive in systems that budget for memory as renewable resource. The cult measures this leakage because the leakage is harvestable. Each attempt to forget becomes practice session for the wound's contours. Dosage follows precise calculations based on body weight, psychological profile, and operational exposure. Underdosing leaves dangerous recall accessible to Imperial interrogation protocols. Overdosing creates memory voids detectable through routine questioning, gaps that draw attention rather than deflecting it. Optimal administration creates fuzzy recollection resembling alcohol-induced blackouts, providing plausible cover for missing time while maintaining basic personality coherence. After 3 cycles, some stop speaking names entirely, addressing one another by task, by shift, by debt column. Scapegoat protocols activate before investigation begins, implementing pre-planned narrative structures that satisfy Imperial requirements while protecting core organizational assets. Names were chosen weeks earlier. Individuals with minimal family connections, poor work records, existing disciplinary problems providing believable motivation for heretical involvement. A sallow man with public drinking fines, a widow whose rent arrears appear on clerk ledgers, the cousin who cannot stop weeping. Their statements are pre-written in tight script, signed under false dates, folded into jacket linings. Personal effects are planted in designated locations. Witness testimony, rehearsed until delivery, appears spontaneous under interrogation pressure. If Arbites knock, if floor chiefs ask wrong questions, the chosen steps forward with private right gone bad. The circle burns out of round, ash smears incorrectly. The story proves just wrong enough to satisfy mediocre auditors. The others rehearse grief without requiring conviction. They need consistency, not authenticity. Bureaucracy prefers symmetry to truth. False traditions are seeded throughout community culture, like mines across the calendar, creating noise that masks genuine ritual activity through deliberate confusion. Harmless customs are encouraged, bread blessing with geometric patterns, children's games involving breath counting, memorial services using ash markings, providing innocent explanations for suspicious materials or behaviors. These traditions function as temporal decoys, their calendars subtly designed to mask precise dates and operational requirements of actual spiritual transactions. A rooftop lantern festival no one remembers from childhood. Workers' saints with implausible tools, and suspicious feast days coinciding with patrol rotations. Community festivals generate crowd cover and acoustic masking for operations, while creating legitimate reasons for post-shift gatherings, candle burning, and group activities mirroring cult procedures without crossing operational thresholds. Gallows humor serves multiple functions beyond psychological pressure relief. Saints of the Drain becomes community vocabulary, normalizing references to ritual elements while providing coded communication channels. The humor spreads through natural social networks, creating linguistic camouflage that makes operational terminology indistinguishable from local dialect. Under operational pressure, authentic wit ossifies into ritualized response pattern, protective charm against despair rather than genuine coping mechanism. Everyone repeats the constructed lie together, creating collective complicity that reinforces individual commitment while distributing liability across maximum population. The Watcher receives public valorization for heroic behavior during fabricated emergency, rescuing children from fictional fire, preventing imaginary industrial accident. This recognition provides social credit while creating obligation to maintain cover story, justifying her prominence during constructed timeline. Private threats follow public praise with bureaucratic precision. Family housing upgrades become contingent on continued cooperation. Children gain access to better rations dependent on maintained silence. These benefits create dependency relationships, where security breaches would destroy improved living conditions, making betrayal economically catastrophic rather than merely dangerous. Money, food, and time divert continuously to operational security maintenance. Forget-me-salts cost wages, false evidence requires materials, cover stories demand rehearsal time consuming domestic hours, families conscripted through accumulated debt provide labor for security theater, while participants become liars in small, efficient ways. The tax remits daily in jitter, in distraction, in silence after sudden noise when tongues check for copper and shadows measure for delay. The fundamental paradox emerges through operational analysis. To keep rights safe, cults must make their members fundamentally unsafe. Security measures create more vulnerability than they prevent through systematic social isolation, psychological conditioning, and economic dependency. Members become more valuable to organizations than to themselves, trapped within systems that harvest their fear while promising protection from consequences their participation creates. Breath counting returns as nervous habit during factory shifts, unconscious rhythm matching baffle hymn cadence, while participants believe they have forgotten ritual involvement. The conditioning persists despite chemical intervention, creating behavioral signatures detectable by trained observers. We count with them during shifts, watching breath patterns that mark time according to schedules they cannot consciously recall. Next, we examine the other side of the market where their accumulated debts are traded, valued, and converted into operational favors within economies operating beyond imperial taxation. We examine imperial prophylaxis and its systematic limitations, revealing institutional responses that mirror the spiritual machinery they claim to oppose. The Imperium fights invoices with counter-invoices, creating parallel bureaucracies that feed the same attention economy they seek to starve. 3 institutions carry this burden. The Ministorum trains reflex, the Commissariat enforces compliance, and the Ordo Malleus audits the remainder. Their objective proves simple to state and impossible to achieve: deny attention, dismantle cadence, and sever observation clauses before spiritual invoices can be collected. Ministorum sermons teach the 3 denials with catechistic precision. Do not count, do not look, do not name. These represent point-by-point inversion of cult practices requiring breath counting, eye contact with ritual implements, and true name pronunciation within circles. The denials function as spiritual prophylaxis designed to starve entity manifestation by refusing to provide the attention, fear, and recognition that enable transaction completion. However, the denials create operational contradictions that prove structurally unavoidable. Do not count conflicts with survival requirements in populations whose existence depends on shift schedules, ration calculations, and quota management. Workers count automatically. Breaths during heavy lifting, heartbeats during dangerous procedures, steps through hazardous corridors. Prohibiting counting drives the practice underground while creating anxiety about natural cognitive functions, generating the very fear entities find nourishing. Do not look contradicts safety protocols, demanding visual attention to equipment failures, structural damage, and behavioral anomalies, indicating heretical activity. Do not name prevents threat identification while creating communication barriers that hamper security operations, requiring precise personnel accountability. The contradictions multiply through institutional implementation. Commissariat field cards warn troops never to complete eyewitness under any circumstances, yet military doctrine requires sworn testimony for disciplinary proceedings, casualty reports, and operational debriefings. The phrase becomes forbidden, yet functionally necessary, creating linguistic anxiety that generates measurable psychological stress. Commissariat field cards reduce mysticism to mechanical drills with bureaucratic efficiency. Section A mandates cadence disruption through 5.4 counter hymns, 5 beats inhaled, 4 beats exhaled, practiced until respiratory rhythm becomes automatic under combat stress. Section B prohibits completion of eyewitness even under direct orders, requiring troops to quote Discipline Code 145B and request immediate arrest rather than comply. Section C provides decoy protocols. Every squad carries 3 iron nails in wax-wrapped pouches for emergency misdirection when copper floods the mouth and shadows lag. The counter hymn serves multiple functions beyond rhythm disruption. It provides psychological comfort through active resistance rather than passive denial, creating group cohesion through shared defensive practice while demonstrating institutional competence through concrete countermeasures. However, rhythmic breathing creates meditative states that can increase psychic sensitivity rather than reducing it. Group synchronization produces the same entrainment effects as cult practices, merely at different frequencies. Most significantly, the 5-4 pattern provides addressing information to entities capable of mathematical calculation. Scholar catechisms drill counter-hymns during work breaks, safety drills, and enforced silence periods, creating ambient acoustic fields intended to prevent spontaneous manifestation. Children learn to breathe defensively before they learn to read, their respiratory patterns shaped by institutional doctrine that treats air itself as potentially hostile territory requiring constant vigilance. Ordo manuals treat ritual sites like crime scenes, requiring systematic documentation before destruction. Teams photograph geometric patterns, analyze chalk composition, and measure iron filing distribution for threat assessment rather than spiritual purification. Standard cleanup requires controlled burns, followed by salt application and substrate removal to 30 centimeters depth, treating psychic residue as quantifiable contamination requiring material remediation. Protocol Theta 9 represents the most sophisticated Imperial response framework, acknowledging that traditional countermeasures often prove inadequate or counterproductive. Veil mirrors properly, not as symbolic gesture, but to prevent psychic backscatter, creating multiple addressing points. Invert breath counting. Use 5.4 cadence to disrupt entrainment, while maintaining awareness that rhythm itself creates vulnerability. Treat simple iron as affect sink, not ward. Collect filings with wet cloth rather than dispersing through sweeping, preventing redistribution of conductive materials. The protocol's critical exception acknowledges operational realities that theological doctrine cannot address. If copper floods the mouth, speak decoy names into iron nails and remain motionless. This represents confusion tactic exploiting addressing systems rather than relying on supposed barrier properties. The decoy name creates false invoice, misdirecting entity attention, while authentic spiritual signature remains protected through stillness and silence. The central paradox emerges through operational analysis. Imperial training exercises inadvertently replicate conditions that entities find nourishing. Combat drills generate controlled fear under structured conditions. Loyalty testing produces anxiety about betrayal and punishment. Heresy recognition training requires detailed study of forbidden practices, creating familiarity that transforms into inadvertent invitation. Fear rehearsals, mandated during the periods of psychic unrest, feed the same attention economy they claim to combat. Denial rituals, where communities gather to publicly disavow heretical practices, become their own inadvertent offerings, focusing collective psychic energy on the very entities they seek to ignore. Sometimes these countermeasures provide convenient pretexts for political purges, with accusations of counting wrong or looking too long, becoming tools for eliminating dissidents while generating spiritual revenue through orchestrated terror. Control mechanisms carry measurable costs throughout the population. Units drilling cadence inversion report elevated sleep disturbance rates. Parish districts with strict mirror hygiene develop black markets for vanity glass. Workers taught never to speak names develop code dialects that baffle medical personnel and Arbeits investigators. False positives multiply exponentially. Flickering lumen strips become threat indicators. Cold snaps empty assembly halls. Routine maintenance generates heresy reports. The spiritual cost accumulates through systematic reduction of natural human behaviors to potential security threats. Citizens learn to experience breathing, looking, and speaking as dangerous activities requiring constant self-monitoring. This psychological conditioning creates the same spiritual vulnerability that entities exploit, merely channeled through different collection methods. Safety rules mirror ritual procedures so closely that they back-channel invitations while claiming prevention. Breath control, geometric awareness, iron handling, witness testimony. Imperial protocols require identical practices with marginally different intentions. The procedural similarity creates operational confusion, where defensive measures become offensive capabilities through minimal modification. When should you deliberately break the 3 denials? Protocol. Theta 9 authorizes 3 exceptions, each expensive but potentially life-saving. First, if copper floods the mouth and persists past 3 heartbeats, speak a decoy name into iron while maintaining downward gaze and immediately miscount. Skip numbers or repeat them until taste recedes. Second, if shadow lag exceeds half-second under hard light, step wrong across 2 nails simultaneously to deschedule the floor. Then begin 5/4 counter rhythm as loudly as conditions permit. Third, if a watcher is present and breath 6 approaches, interrupt observations clause by saying anything except "I witness," prayer, curse, work roll number. Then leave immediately. These inversions represent procedural heresy, serving imperial interests through technical violation of established doctrine. They work because they exploit systematic vulnerabilities in spiritual bureaucracies, depending on precise compliance with established protocols. The tactics prove that understanding the enemy's accounting becomes essential for survival, creating the very familiarity that doctrine prohibits. The moral ledger balances poorly. Every prophylaxis focusing fear into sharp edges risks feeding the attention economy it seeks to starve. Citywide denial days generate synchronized thought. Warning posters invite the behaviors they prohibit. Children learn forbidden rhythms by hearing adults correct them. The Imperium's hypocrisy proves structural rather than intentional. Institutions manage populations through ritual, while the warp monetizes ritualized populations. Next, we examine how accumulated human essence converts into tradable commodities within markets operating beyond imperial taxation, where whispers purchase timing windows and witnessed breaths buy protection from the very authorities who teach these countermeasures. We audit the spiritual trade networks, where human essence undergoes systematic conversion into fungible commodities through established processing centers operating beyond imperial taxation. These markets function with bureaucratic precision rather than mystical chaos, their ledgers balancing fear against favor through exchange rates determined by supply, demand, and operational risk assessment. The floors are chalked with grids rather than circles, ledgers stacked high enough to need servitors just to turn pages. Brokers speak low Gothic, dark tongue, and numbers with equal fluency. 3 primary units dominate spiritual commerce, each representing different grades of processed human essence. Whispers function as recorded breaths of fear, bottled as sound, or transcribed as ink stroke, each unit containing measurable psychic resonance, calibrated for specific operational applications. High-grade whispers, harvested during genuine terror rather than manufactured anxiety, command premium exchange rates due to enhanced potency in timing applications. A single authenticated whisper equals 1 breath length of concentrated fear, captured within certified cadence, verified by watcher testimony, and sealed to medium through established protocols. Breaths represent count-confirmed moments of submission witnessed and certified, according to audit standards, each unit documenting measured surrender through respiratory monitoring during controlled circumstances. The 4/3 baffle hymn cadence standardizes breath quality across different harvesting operations, ensuring consistent unit values regardless of geographic variations. Processing requires witness verification through thumbprint authentication in ASH, creating audit trails that survive document destruction. 47 breaths purchase passage through contested warp lanes. 93 breaths buy temporary immunity from Imperial patrol scrutiny. 214 breaths secure protection during major operations requiring extended exposure. Marks serve as premium currency, witnessed contracts scored into substrate as proof of completed transactions, their burn patterns functioning as both receipt and collateral. Each mark contains embedded information readable by trained evaluators, transaction date, spiritual quantity, witness identity, and completion status. Unlike whispers or breaths, marks cannot be counterfeited without access to genuine spiritual transactions, creating natural scarcity, maintaining exchange stability. A single authenticated mark purchases ordnance that shouldn't exist according to Imperial technical manuals, weapons whose metallurgy violates established physics, ammunition tracking targets through emotional resonance, protective equipment deflecting attention rather than projectiles. Handlers serve as primary conversion specialists, accepting raw spiritual material from harvesting operations and processing it into standardized currency through established refinement procedures. They maintain quality control standards while coordinating distribution networks connecting local operations with regional demand. Handler commissions typically range from 12 to 18% of processed value, with premium rates for high-risk transactions. A junior handler in a Sumport stall trades 50 whispers for Medici silence. The same whispers, laundered through 2 knave houses and a shrine, become quarter-hour Auspex blindness over munitions trains. Apostate priests function as authentication specialists, their theological training providing verification services essential for high-value transactions. They assess purity ratings, cross-reference ledger entries, and maintain patron relationships enabling efficient favor conversion. Their institutional knowledge navigates both imperial and heretical bureaucracies with practiced ease, earning 25 to 30% commission, reflecting specialized expertise and extreme personal risk. Heretic engineers provide technical conversion services, transforming spiritual currency into material advantages through processes violating established imperial doctrine. They manufacture impossible ordnance, design equipment incorporating warp-based technologies, and provide technical support for operations requiring non-standard capabilities. Their services command premium rates due to specialized knowledge requirements and catastrophic exposure liability. Control mechanisms ensure systematic harvesting, rather than opportunistic exploitation through comprehensive audit protocols. Ledgers undergo cross-indexing across multiple warbands, creating decentralized but interconnected financial systems. The ash column's curve must match wax cylinder amplitude. Water thumbprints compare against scar topography photographed at harvest. Fraud penalties escalate systematically. Forgers become metronomes, stitched and positioned at exchange doors to breathe true rhythm until death. Random audits by dark apostles test samples with iron nails held to tongue. Bite of cold and copper indicates live current. Arbitrage opportunities exist within market inefficiencies. Warbands facing naval pressure overpay for marks while discounting whispers. Plague worlds pay premium for breaths, buying safe conduct through choked warp lanes. Some exchanges bundle commodities into palls, securitized slabs of witnessed closures sold to patrons needing immediate proof against rival demon claims. Losses cascade through crews and neighborhoods like electrical fire when authentication fails. Spiritual derivatives emerge wherever markets achieve sufficient stability. Futures in terror, pledges delivering 1,000 whispers by specified dates, fund acquisition of knives, salt, and laborers. Options on marks, rights claiming next 3 witness burns from designated sublevels, underwrite handler promotions. Entire crews sleep badly in shifts beside veiled mirrors, their leak harvested through careful salt dosing in facilities euphemistically termed choir dormitories, but functioning as tithe farms. The poor cell present tense, breath tonight, nightmare tomorrow, blood this week. The comfortable sell other people through positional leverage, foreman scheduling dangerous shifts to harvest fear spikes before inspections. Clerks, misfiling complaints, preachers steering grieving parents to handlers without touching coin. Elites purchase clean exits through marks exchanged for papers, whispers for obliterated debt. Everyone else finances those exits through systematic spiritual extraction. The human cost accumulates through progressive dehumanization. Participants learn to experience themselves and others as divisible commodities, whose essence can be extracted, quantified, and traded without destroying core identity. Language adapts accordingly. Persons become invoices with negotiable options, scarred arms read as compliance indicators, wired jaws signify choir duty performed. Gallows humor provides psychological furniture. Handlers call matched whisper breath sets, weddings, mark collections, choir books. No one laughs, but the words persist because minds need categories. We answer systematically what accumulated spiritual currency purchases in operational terms. Whispers buy timing windows. Concentrated fear creates localized psychic distortions, enabling synchronized manifestation for squad insertions, tactical strikes, or logistics coordination, where standard chronometry proves inadequate. Marks buy protection from imperial authorities through corruption networks, treating spiritual currency as acceptable payment for official blindness, misfiled reports, and convenient accidents, preventing investigation. Breaths aggregate into significant power through mass accumulation, enabling large-scale operations requiring sustained entity attention, while providing cheap, bulk currency for routine transactions. The central revelation emerges through market analysis. The moment before your soul is claimed represents pre-existing inventory rather than spontaneous experience. Template catalogs exist: bed, clean, breeze, or mother's hand, warm soup, unbroken spoon. Ordered by demographic and price point. When the critical moment arrives, chosen templates overlay debtor consciousness to maximize consent while minimizing extraction mess. The market writes the description participants believe they authored. Their intimate final vision reduced to standardized spiritual product listed in ledgers outliving physical existence. Imperial coin sometimes crosses these tables, laundered through shrine friends and regimental fences. Ordo agents purchase what they cannot seize: breath bundles, timing raids, marks papering disappearances, whispers opening patrol schedules without requisitions, alerting lords. Hypocrisy proves structural rather than intentional. Institutions managing populations through ritual, while warp monetizes ritualized populations. Next, we revisit the set piece to expose the engineered consent underlying apparent spiritual transaction, revealing whose hands arrange the bed, the breeze, and the mercy that is not mercy, but inventory management in markets that never close. We pull back the operational curtain to expose the systematic manipulation underlying apparent spiritual transaction. The moment before your soul is claimed represents engineered consent through methodical exploitation of human psychology rather than mystical threshold or divine intervention. Every component, scarcity, timing, imagery, observation, follows established protocols optimized through millennia of operational refinement to maximize spiritual yield while maintaining participant cooperation through carefully managed illusion of agency. Scarcity schedules exhaustion with industrial precision, creating physiological conditions that maximize extraction efficiency while minimizing resistance. 6 weeks of controlled fasting sharpen pain reception while weakening cognitive defenses. Sleep deprivation fragments, REM cycles, until psychic boundaries become permeable without inducing complete breakdown. This conditioning transforms human bodies into precision instruments, optimized for fear production, their critical faculties eroded by the very environment that promises salvation. Dreams grow bright and organized through systematic memory abrasion. Forget-me-salts do not erase, but create deliberate cognitive wounds that bleed recollections into accessible storage, a warehouse of labeled experiences ready for harvest. Breath-counting entrains panic to match baffle hymn cadences through systematic respiratory conditioning. The 4-3 rhythm synchronizes human physiology with entity manifestation cycles while creating temporal framework enabling controlled spiritual extraction. Participants believe they maintain agency through counting, but the cadence functions as leash rather than anchor, guiding consciousness toward predetermined outcomes. The 6 breaths rule represents precise temporal gating, ensuring peak vulnerability coincides with critical extraction moments. Bodies become metronomes for their own systematic processing. Template imagery represents the system's most insidious component. The vision participants see during critical moments, loved faces, clean beds, cool breezes, constitutes pre-existing inventory rather than spontaneous revelation. Market catalogs organize standardized templates by demographic profile and psychological assessment. Bed, clean, breeze for working-class extraction. Mother's hand, warm soup, targeting family psychology. Summer draft, open window, appealing to environmental desperation. These templates undergo construction through memory harvesting from previous transactions, wounded recall processed into universal products that feel personal while functioning as mass-produced commodities designed for optimal extraction efficiency. The persistent imperial doctrine that cold iron repels the warp functions as deliberate misdirection, concealing operational reality. Iron dust serves as conductive medium rather than protective barrier, pooling accumulated fear until sufficient mass enables entity coherence within localized space-time. The 9 nails function as anchoring system, scheduling entity arrival for designated breath rather than repelling approach. Iron filings drink terror, fast and clean, converting diffuse anxiety into focused spiritual currency, available for immediate collection. These are gauges on a pump, not mystical portents, measurable operational indicators that the addressing system functions correctly. Environmental controls optimize extraction through systematic manipulation of physical variables. Temperature drops create physiological stress while making breath visible for timing verification. Acoustic isolation maintains internal pressure, enabling baffle him effectiveness. Shadow lag becomes measurable under controlled lighting. Not supernatural phenomenon, but readout indicating psychic density accumulation, where extraction will be cleanest. The watcher's eye witness functions as signature completing contractual obligations rather than providing rescue. Observation transforms wild fear into bottled whispers, counted breaths, witnessed marks through deliberate attention and formal acknowledgement. The thumbprint pressed into ash serves as authentication, seal-enabling spiritual currency conversion, while finalizing transaction according to established audit standards. Without proper observation, spiritual extraction remains incomplete and non-transferable within market systems. Template deployment occurs through psychic overlay during the engineered moment, chosen images superimposed over debtor consciousness to maximize consent while minimizing extraction difficulty. The overlay appears spontaneous, but represents systematic manipulation, hope sculpted from commodified memory to facilitate final surrender. Participants believe they experience private revelation while consuming pre-packaged spiritual product designed for optimal collection efficiency. Imperial safety rituals often double as inadvertent extraction tools through structural similarity to cult practices. Breath control, geometric awareness, iron handling, witness testimony, defensive protocols require identical procedures with marginally different intentions. Fear rehearsals mandated during psychic unrest feed the same attention economy they claim to combat. The three denials create anxiety about natural cognitive functions, generating the very fear entities find nourishing. Breaking established protocols can increase survival odds when applied strategically rather than reflexively. If copper floods the mouth, operational warning indicating active spiritual processing, speak decoy names into iron to confuse invoice systems while protecting authentic spiritual signature. Count incorrectly on purpose to deschedule temporal anchoring. Look down deliberately to prevent eye contact with addressing systems. Step wrong across two nails simultaneously to deschedule geometry. These represent procedural heresy serving survival through technical violation of established doctrine. They exploit systematic vulnerabilities in spiritual bureaucracies depending on precise compliance with established protocols. You are not breaking spells, but fouling forms, shifting costs rather than eliminating them entirely. If you taste copper, you are already being counted and processed. The system has identified you, measured your vulnerability, and initiated extraction protocol. The moment before represents final stage in long, bureaucratic process rather than sudden mystical event. What can be done in those final seconds requires understanding the machinery well enough to jam specific gears without triggering catastrophic failure. Next, we observe someone attempting such intervention under operational conditions, where failure carries consequences extending beyond immediate physical harm. The machine will keep counting, so will we. We synthesize the institutional themes that govern human existence within systems designed for systematic extraction. Imperial structures feed on compliance through taxation, conscription, and surveillance. Chaos feeds on attention through fear, desperation, and witnessed suffering. Both curate the citizens' final seconds for maximum yield, creating parallel bureaucracies that monetize human essence through different collection methods while serving identical economic functions. The war between order and disorder masks underlying collaboration in the business of harvesting souls. Shift sirens cut through Foundry Complex Sigma-7 like blades sawing dull metal. Heat vents sigh, presses idle. Workers file out in regulation formation, ash-gray and hollow-eyed from another rotation feeding the war machine. One foundryman lingers by the scrap bin, where bent nails and metal offcuts pile like industrial teeth. The taste of copper floods his gums without bleeding. Stage 2 threshold indicator confirming psychic permeability, achieving operational levels. Under harsh sodium lumen strips, his shadow lags behind physical motion, silhouette moving fractions of seconds after his hands, 0.4 seconds and increasing. The floor appears to be ordinary rockcrete until closer inspection reveals 9 rust stains arranged in a subtle arc, remnants of previous geometric anchoring. Someone has stenciled safety slogans over what might once have been a mirror. Behind the paint, condensation beads as though something presses against the surface from within. The air cools 12 degrees within 30 seconds. His breath plumes in sudden cold, vapor marking the approach of something that operates according to different chronometry than standard imperial time. The iron hum resonates in dental work, creating persistent low-frequency vibration in modified teeth. A supervisor steps from the catwalk above with parade ground precision, eyes already focused on the worker, as if preselected for the role of watcher. The system has identified him, measured his accumulated debts, medical bills, housing quotas, family obligations, and cross-referenced them against his psychological profile for optimal template selection. The foundryman recalls counter-catechism, drilled during mandatory safety briefings, commissariat protocols disguised as industrial training. If copper persists past 3 heartbeats, speak decoy names into iron and remain motionless. Count wrong deliberately to deschedule temporal anchoring. Never complete, eye-witness under any circumstances. These represent odds shifters rather than protective charms, procedural heresy serving survival through technical violation of established doctrine. He palms a construction nail from the scrap bin. Not consecrated implement, but functional iron, cold and conductive. Speaking his father's name into the metal rather than his own, he creates false invoice while protecting authentic spiritual signature through misdirection. He miscounts audibly. 1, 1, 3, 5, 5, 2. Industrial noise masks the deliberate stutter. His weight shifts across 2 rust stains simultaneously, disturbing implied geometric addressing through intentional navigation error. Eyes remain fixed on oil-stained work boots, denying visual confirmation required for precise targeting. The moment stretches without completing its intended arc. Temperature fluctuates, copper taste recedes marginally, shadow lag decreases as psychic pressure encounters systematic interference. Above him, the supervisor inhales to speak the phrase that seals contracts, but numbers spill where witness testimony should go. Shift Gamma 7, fault report A17. The countersign drowns in operational noise. Something in the ledger hesitates. The schedule misaligns by critical fractions. 2 possibilities exist in the operational record. In the first, procedural interference succeeds. The entity arrives where the false invoice indicates a person should be, encounters iron-bound syllables and disrupted geometry, then collects the nearest payable debt through proximity substitution. The supervisor's eyes widen as copper floods his mouth. He glances upward reflexively into the painted panel. Ripples spread across the stenciled surface. Later, a witness mark appears not on the factory floor, but in administrative stairwells, scored into substrate where supervisory personnel conduct routine inspections. The foundryman clocks out with trembling hands. A foreman's desk sits empty the next morning and remains vacant. No trumpets sound. The ledger balances through lateral transfer. In the second outcome, the worker fails at microscopic margins. Reflexive upward glance seeking the source of unnatural cold. Eye contact establishes addressing precision despite distance and barriers. True name slips unbidden from lips as copper overwhelms tongue sensation. The breath sequence he attempted to disrupt snaps back into clean 4.3 cadence, because bodies remember conditioning more reliably than conscious intention. The supervisor never completes "I witness." Someone in the assembly area does, a visiting cousin choking on words she doesn't understand while sealing transactions she cannot perceive. The witness mark appears on factory flooring near drainage systems, where the ninth nail once anchored manifestation. It sweats in humid weather and frosts during dry conditions, permanent testament to successful extraction. Both outcomes validate systematic accounting principles. Success demonstrates that procedural knowledge enables survival margin improvement through odds shifting rather than risk elimination. Failure proves that spiritual extraction continues regardless of individual resistance, maintaining consistent yield through population-level harvesting. The ledger balances whether through this transaction or the next, this debtor or his neighbor. Institutional appetite remains constant, only collection methods vary. We close with survival protocols derived from operational analysis rather than theological doctrine. These represent mechanical procedures enabling marginal survival improvement within systematically hungry empire rather than protective charms or salvation promises. If your gums taste copper, you are being counted and processed. Speak decoy names into iron objects while maintaining downward gaze. Count wrong deliberately. Skip numbers, repeat them, reverse sequence, until metallic taste recedes. Do not complete respiratory patterns matching 4.3 cadence. If shadow lag exceeds half-second under hard light, step wrong across 2 nails simultaneously to deschedule geometric addressing. Begin 5.4 counter-rhythm breathing as loudly as conditions permit. Move toward areas with multiple light sources preventing clear shadow definition. Never complete "I witness." This phrase finalizes spiritual transactions regardless of context. Interrupt with numbers, curses, work identification. Anything except those 2 words. Quote, "Discipline Code 145B. And request immediate arrest rather than comply with orders requiring witness testimony during suspicious circumstances." Break established cadence. When rooms grow cold, when mirrors ripple, when breath plumes in still air, disrupt timing through deliberate procedural violation. Cough during hymns, shuffle feet during silence, speak during counting sequences. Systematic spiritual extraction depends on precise compliance with established protocols. Veil mirrors properly. When you cannot, avert your gaze. Reflective surfaces create multiple addressing points, fragmenting entity attention. Look down and maintain downward focus until environmental temperature normalizes and psychic pressure dissipates. These procedures shift costs rather than eliminating them, delay collection rather than canceling debt. Success means rescheduled extraction, not permanent escape. The institutional apparatus continues operating regardless of individual outcomes. The foundryman returns to his station or disappears into administrative paperwork. Either way, shift schedules continue. Quotas remain constant. New workers arrive to replace those whose invoices close. The machinery counts breaths, measures shadows, schedules extractions according to protocols optimized through millennia of operational refinement. Citizens wake, tasting copper. Shadows lag behind movement. Breath counts automatically during dangerous procedures. Communities adapt through gallows, humor flattened thin by repetition. Saints of the drain, muttered during cleanup. Workers count wrong as nervous habit. Children learn 5.4 at school and 4.3 in dreams because nightmares breathe in old cadences. Vendors sell nails as luck pieces. Arbites confiscate them as contraband. Both understand their weight exceeds their metal content. The institutional system keeps counting. So do we. We count because counting reveals operational parameters while providing timing information essential for procedural survival. We count because systematic ignorance feeds extraction apparatus more efficiently than knowledge. We count because someone must maintain audit trails documenting the cost of existence within empires that monetize souls. We end where we began. A pupil reflecting rusted iron, a line of ash resembling distant horizon, a room that hums without sound. The witness mark cools. The drain accepts another shift's residue. The ledger remains open, columns balanced, accounts current. Someone will enter and make it run again. The saints of the drain keep silent watch over transactions that never truly end, only transfer from one column to another, in books that outlive the bodies whose essence they document.